Welcome back to Can I Has Buff, the Warframe series that takes older or weaker weapons that I feel needs a rework or buff to make them fit with the current game. In this episode, we will be taking a look at the Talons, C4 style throwing weapons that can be detonated manually with the Alt-Fire button. The Talons were introduced on December 3rd, 2015 in Update 18, also known as the Second Dream Update. They received a buff or a nerf, depending on your preference, on March 24th, 2017 in the Octavius Anthem update, which made explosive weapons with timed grenades explode one at a time rather than all at once. This allowed players to stack Talons on an enemy, and detonating would result in explosions over a short period of time rather than all at once. This extended the damage over time and its effectiveness in crowds as enemies get near the explosions, but did lower the DPS and bulk damage. The Talons act like throwing knives and travel slowly with a heavy arc. They can be detonated by pressing your Alt-Fire button, and if the Talons are stuck to an enemy or an object, it will also ragdoll nearby enemies in a small radius. This is the weapon's only real advantage to actual throwing knives or even some other explosive-based pistols, since it also has self-damage to the user as well as the procs they produce. The damage is low against armor, and the status is not high enough to reliably stack corrosive procs to remove said armor, so the knockdowns from blast procs and ragdolls from the weapon when stuck allows it to keep enemies on the ground. One of the major disadvantages of the Talons are the slow time between throwing them, waiting for them to get to the enemy, then detonating them only to watch them deal low damage. With multi-shot, it will often fire more than one at a time, which counts toward the cap that you can fire at once. So in reality, besides just increasing the amount of explosions, the actual increase in damage is non-existent, so dropping multi-shot can actually be worth it in some instances. With that out of the way, let's talk about buffing the Talons. Taking advantage of its drill head that allows it to bore into surfaces, sticking them on enemies will now inject a razor-sharp, luring drill head into the enemy upon exploding. As they lie on the ground from the ragdoll, they suffer a torrent of slash procs as the drill bores into their flesh. Each Talons will deal 50% of the weapon's base damage as pure slash damage each second for 4 seconds. This would not only add some fun to the weapon, but also let it tackle armor, which are the Talons' biggest weakness. Another buff that would make it viable against armor, when stuck directly to enemies, the status jumps to 100% regardless of mods, but only when stuck directly to said enemies. This would allow several procs to occur when stuck, including corrosive, to give it a better shot against armor, as well as performing generally better overall. When sticking to enemies, Talons will also arm themselves with a rear tether and stick to and grab a single enemy, ragdolling them and pulling them toward the stuck enemy. When stacking several Talons on a single enemy, this will force small groups to clump together so the Talon's explosive radius is more effective. Due to them being ragdolled similar to Vortex, as well as the original enemy being held in place due to the massive enemies stuck to them, Talons will now also detonate after 3 seconds of being stuck to avoid being too overpowered. This would essentially be a more mobile version of the Penta's tether grenades combined with Nidus's larva ability. So that's the Talons, explosive claw grenades that stick to enemies and generally don't discriminate who they toss in the air. What do you think of the Talons? Do you think they need a buff, and if so, were my buff suggestions good ideas? In any case, thanks for watching and stay tuned for the next installment of Can I Has Buff.